I know you have quite a few things on the agenda with regards to that and some fascinating solutions. Take us through that.
Okay, so the one thing that we did cover off, which Angus spoke about, is major disasters. You mentioned Japan, but it gets business continuity and disaster recovery is much smaller than that. I've got a PC, the PC stops working, the PC fails. I've got a disaster. How do I carry on working? I get a virus on a machine, or even worse, in an office. Something happens in an office, a small power failure within a region. How do I address that? And virtual computing, virtual workspaces really addresses all of that. I have the ability to take my desktop, whatever I'm working on at the time, onto any device anywhere in the world. So the idea is to be able to move to what's called a service-based or utility-based computing model. You walk to a power switch, you turn on the lights switch on. You don't think about how it works, that circuit's closing and power's getting there. It's the same as when it comes to working. You want to use a word processor, you want to use a spreadsheet. How does that work? You really shouldn't be worrying about an operating system hardware. And virtualization separates all of those. It gives you the ability to have your application that you require, whether it's Excel or Word or a PowerPoint spreadsheet, available on any device at any time, anywhere in the world.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a journalist, so I know when I'm typing halfway through the sentence and then I have to go into a meeting and I come back and it's all gone.
Yeah.
How would that be able to, the solution that you just described, how would that be able to assist me with what I would deem as a massive disaster?
Yeah, so very, very simply, what we do is we store the desktop in the cloud.
Yeah.
And the endpoint is irrelevant. So whether it's a PC or an iPad or a Mac, you really don't care about, or a phone, you really don't care about what your endpoint device is. If you keep your desktop, the environment that you're working on, sitting in the cloud, and that's your cloud infrastructure, you can access that. You can basically reach into that cloud and pull down the application that you want from anywhere. So I could walk into an internet cafe anywhere in the world. I could be I'm flying to Spain. I could get off the plane, go to an internet cafe, log onto my desktop, which is my workspace, my virtual workspace, and have the same document there that I was working on half an hour ago on an iPad on the aeroplane.
And I think nowadays that everybody is more and more connected.
Yeah.
Obviously the challenge is the connectivity and the cost of that connectivity.
Yes,
and
Angus,
availability.
you tell us about that.
So I think there's no doubt that
solutions there.
Well, the key is it obviously needs to be affordable from the point of view of the end user. So if it's going to be very, very expensive to get that connectivity, so you obviously need broadband for proper experience. You need a cost per unit. You need, for example, you don't want to be paying a massive cost per megabyte of data if your entire desktop is sitting in the cloud. But once you get over that hump, and that's what we're starting to see in the South African market, suddenly that virtualization becomes a very practical thing to do. And especially for businesses that need scalability. The real challenge is with scalability is that and I guess this is your average CIO or IT manager's problem, is frankly the business wants you to deliver this much and they've given you this much budget and this much time. Yeah. And so the scalability in the cloud is it's not infinite, but it's very close to infinite in many times.
And with regards to the budget, how can you close
that
gap?
Well, let's put it very simplistically. I was just the example we were talking about in the break. You've got a server, so you want to go out and buy a server for your big application. Now, for a small or medium-sized company, that's going to be a big investment. That's going to be a massive piece of capital investment up front. And you're going to have to guess or estimate how much you need, by when, and how long this thing is going to last. And if your business really grows, maybe 6 months down the line, you now have to double the processing power. If that was a virtual server, if you were in the cloud already, you would go into a website, tick a box, add a bit of operational cost, which typically would be much more scalable and much more cost effective, and you would seamlessly just be able to upgrade. In some of the cloud systems, it's even more impressive than that. You have software behind that allows you to spawn instances of servers and as and when you need them in an automated fashion. Some of the big platforms that run behind cloud services like Amazon or what we're doing with Tata actually are in the realm of science fiction. The servers come and go on a minute-by-minute basis.
Self-provisioning.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff if you think about the scalability. So you're not necessarily saving or not having the capacity, but you're able to scale to exactly what you want when you want it.
So what is the cost relative to what the cost would be if you had to buy the server or buy into the whole data center?
Typically when you look at these things, you're looking at total cost of ownership.
Yeah.
And often the thing that hits a business, I won't give you exact numbers, but the thing often hits a business is the amortization on a server, which they've had to buy for the next 12 months, whatever it might be. If you can scale, then obviously you can be paying for what you need, when you need it, on that day. So if you just work out the operational cost versus the cost of having to own that thing outright. Not forgetting, of course, that if you own it outright, you're still going to pay for power. You still have to pay for the guy who has to watch the lights blinking. You still have to pay for the room and all these sort of other things. So once you're in the cloud, Those are the real savings. Those are the things that disappear out of the cost.
Let me ask you, yes. go
Okay,
ahead.
so one thing there as well, which is important, and where virtualization started and came from, is what happened in the past is we needed a database server. We bought a database server. Then we bought another piece of hardware, which was an application server, then a mail server, then a print server. And the problem is we were utilizing 20% of each of those. What virtualization allows you to do is to slice up one physical piece of hardware and put each of those devices on one. So your utilization is a lot better. Hence the cost saving comes in. It's a massive cost saving. It's a saving on hardware infrastructure. So we're sharing one piece of hardware which was being utilized 20%. We're now utilizing 90% of the physical piece of hardware.
I just wanted to come back to the business continuity side, because this is great. It's great stuff just using the cloud, but in the in business continuity sense, there's another aspect, and that is that. And the example I wanted to give is something that we're offering, which is a virtual call center. Now, obviously there's quite a lot of call center operations in South Africa, and what we see with those is that they have very dynamic requirements. So it's very, very tricky for a call center operation to invest heavily in a large amount of space and a large amount of physical call center. If you virtualize the call center, you can actually, firstly, you can scale very, very easily, because everything goes into the cloud. The communications platforms go into the cloud. All of the software that manages the call center goes into the cloud. So you can provision on a per user basis. I could, for example, set you up as a call center agent at home, and I could set up 50 people in a room at a day's notice to operate as a call center. Now, that kind of functionality means that not only can you scale very easily, but you can also then recover, and literally recover, from having your entire call center burned down.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of business continuity which you can get once you virtualize.
Okay, so Angus, I think, summed it up quite nicely. It is something like out of a science fiction movie also. But let me ask you this. Is it 100% safe? Is it 100% guaranteed that you can maintain 100% business continuity at all times through these virtual
through
clouds?
desktop virtualization? The other aspect which comes into play as well is bearing in mind that your data is sitting in the cloud. If I have a device, there was a study that was done not so long ago that the average middle manager laptop in the US is worth $50,000. So it's a couple of $1,000s worth of hardware and software, but the data that's on there has enormous value. That gets lost, that information's gone. We hope that the backup processors are working on an endpoint device. Perhaps he's a remote user, an executive, he's traveling a lot. Where does he back his data up to? If we go virtualization and your information is stored in the cloud, it's in the cloud. We assume that the cloud is safe. We assume that it's secure. We assume that it's backed up, as data centers are, and disaster recovery capable. Antivirus issues go away because your endpoint doesn't sit on the endpoint anymore, it sits in the cloud. It's a little bit of mind shifting that has to happen here to understand that your Windows 7 desktop that you traditionally see isn't sitting on your PC anymore, it's sitting in the cloud, and you've really got a really long keyboard and video cable running into this cloud, this ethereal cloud somewhere, and antivirus issues go away because your information is sitting in the cloud. It's not sitting on an endpoint, so you can't put strange media on there. You can lock a user down, and his data is if he loses his laptop, or his laptop gets broken or gets stolen, the information is secure.
So 100% safe, is that what you're telling me? 100% business continuity at all times.
The one issue which Angus has raised as well, and you've raised and you've picked up on as well, is you have to have connectivity to that device, and I think we're making leaps and bounds.
And that is one of the security issues, I guess, for a business, is am I always connected?
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the point about building out fiber networks with redundancy and connectivity. I'll just touch on the security thing a little bit here, and it's a very interesting point. There's a perception. There's a perception that somehow it's in the cloud, it's less secure. The kind of level of security that we have on data centers is incredibly high. We have levels of security for something which is, there are ratings for data centers, and if you get up to tier 3 or tier 4 data center sort of levels, which is the levels that we construct at, that you're looking at triple layers with biometric security, access control, fire protection systems, backup power systems, something that your average business could never build in-house. Yeah. And the levels of physical security of the data are much higher. As far as the data in the cloud goes, in the enterprise space, we're talking about secure virtualized environments. This isn't the internet. We're not talking about just throwing all your data out on the internet and hoping that it doesn't get stolen. We're talking about secure virtual private network environments, firewalled, virtual firewalls, properly secured systems. They just happen not to be on your premises. So you have a secure private system in the cloud.
Okay, so with regards to solutions going forward for businesses, are we just talking about government and the financial institutions? The JSE perhaps would be an interesting one to figure out solutions for as well. Or are we talking about small scale as well? Would you say it goes for both?
I think it covers both. I think especially this desktop is absolutely for small businesses. Yeah.
The drive at the moment, as I said, it's going to utility-based computing. If I'm a small user, I want to use Word. And the interesting thing is that from a cost-saving perspective, it's going to be driven very, very strongly as well, because I perhaps need to use Word 3 or 4 times a week. maybe that's the nature of my business. Now what I'm doing is I'm going and buying a PC, and I'm going and buying an operating system, and I'm going and buying an application. It's costing me a lot of money. What's going to happen is and it's happening now, it's going to be delivered very shortly from organizations saying, for 50 Rand an hour, you can use Word. You deliver this virtual desktop, you have the ability to work on it, save your information into your space in the cloud, and log off.
And very importantly for us, if you take the South African context of small businesses, and this is something that we're now starting to, you'll see again quite soon, we're going to have some products, products in the market about this soon. But for average small business, it's about being untethered from your office that you're stuck in. So once you can put all this stuff inside the cloud, and you can start to have your services in the cloud, you can have your desktop in your cloud, you can have all these other things in the cloud, you are then more mobile, you can work anywhere.
Would you say the biggest challenge right now to all the solutions that we've just mentioned perhaps is the connectivity issue, and do you think that we are making headway with regards to that? Let's start with you.
From a personal opinion, yes, I think so. I mean, I use a virtual workspace all the time. I live and breathe on my iPad, and I'm always connected. I'll defer to Angus in terms of infrastructure and what we're doing in South Africa.
Because I have my own gripes with internet connectivity.
No, look, there are two aspects to this. I think you need to look at South Africa, and then you need to look at the global connectivity. Yes. I think there's no doubt that that the global connectivity has changed in leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. I think it's with the kind of connectivity we now have available to us. I think for a properly engineered service, in other words, if we were to deliver a virtual private network to an enterprise, we're talking about exceptionally high availabilities internationally on a global basis. You really have to have something as big as a Japanese disaster to isolate a part of the world. Yeah. People ask about core networks around the world, the internet core networks. We have a tier 1 network through Tata, and people often ask us, what is the availability of the tier 1 net? And frankly, it's impossible to answer the question because it never goes down. A tier 1 network, part of the core internet, simply never goes down. Now, people paint scenarios of what would happen if the internet failed. But frankly, the internet is such a resilient device now, globally. It's got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of endpoints and multiple core routes. So globally, I think we're now part of that. 5 submarine cables, we're starting to look like the real world. In South Africa, I think we're getting there, and I think a lot of what Neotel is about is that national connectivity and increasingly getting that fiber connectivity down into businesses. There's a lot of broadband that's done on wireless here, but frankly, for high reliability connectivity into businesses, you've got to have that fiber and fiber redundancy at some point.
On that high optimistic note, I leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so very much for joining me today.